Okay, find the average rate of change of the function over the given interval. What is the given interval? Correct. These two numbers are an interval, so 0 is an x value, 3 is an x value. Well, to do this, what do you think would be helpful? A graph. So go to your calculator and graph 3x squared minus 2. Y equals 3x squared minus 2. Now, when you graph it, you can look at it and try to figure out the average rate of change between 0 and 3. But honestly, it's probably easiest to do what? Go to the table. Second table. Now remember, 0 and 3 is an interval. So those are both x values. So on the table, we need to find their corresponding y values. What is the y value for 0? And what is it for 3? Okay, so the 2 points we have here are 0, -2, and +3, +25. Now that we have those 2 points that are on this parabola, how do we find their average rate of change? The slope. Okay, this is your x1, y1. This is your x2, y2. So it would be 25 minus a -2, y2 minus your y1, over x2 minus your x1. Minus a negative becomes a positive, and that becomes a 27, and then 3 minus 0 becomes a 3, and that reduces to 9. So the average rate of change on the interval 0 to 3 is a 9. Now, do you think the average rate of change would be a 9 if the interval had been like 0 to 5? No, because it's a parabola, okay? It gets steeper and steeper as it goes up. If it were a line, it would be consistent. It would be the same rate of change no matter what interval they gave you. But with a parabola, it would not be the same. Okay, now let's go to the study guide that you were supposed to work on last night, and let's go over these problems. Yes? Yeah, hold on 1 second. Okay, number one. Write y equals -3 times x minus 2 squared plus 7 in standard form. What form is it currently in? Vertex. What does standard form look like? Correct. Y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, this is quite a process. What's the first step? Well, I know what y'all are saying. Basically, you're rewriting it, but as you do, instead of writing x minus 2 squared, you're going to go ahead and write what that means. It means x minus 2 times x minus 2, and then bring down the plus 7. Now what do I need to do to start simplifying this? Distribute. X times x is x squared. X times -2 is, and now you need to distribute this -2 to everything, and that'll produce a -2x plus 4. Okay, now I can bring down the y equals -3 and bring down the plus 7. Now what do I do? Combine like terms. When you combine like terms, what does all this become? -2 minus 2 is -4x. Okay, and now what do we do? Distribute the -3, and that becomes y equals correct. Don't forget about the plus 7. And so the final answer is y equals -3x squared plus 12x minus 5. Now, once you have it in standard form, what could you do tomorrow to make sure your answer is the correct one? Graph them. You graph the vertex form of it, and you graph the standard form, and you'll know you're right because what happens? It's the same parabola. So you'll only see one parabola on your screen even though you've typed in two different equations. Okay, so that's the way to check it tomorrow. Any questions about number 1? Okay, number 2. Write the following quadratic equation in vertex form. So this time we're doing the opposite. They've given it to us in standard form. We're going to write it in vertex form. Well, key word being vertex. How can you figure out the vertex of this equation? You graph it. So on your calculator, x squared minus 6x plus 2. Okay, now it appears to me that the vertex is right 3 and then down what? 7, okay? But if you want to confirm to make sure you haven't counted wrong, you can go to the table and make sure that that is indeed the vertex. When I look at 3, negative 7, look around it. Negative 6, negative 6, negative 3, negative 3, 2, 2, 9, 9. So that's definitely the vertex right there. Okay, the other points are the points on the parabola. And remember, every point on the parabola has a symmetric point across the axis of symmetry. So if your vertex is 3, negative 7, what exactly is the vertex? Like if we're trying to write it in vertex form, which is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k, what part of that form are these numbers? H and k. So if I just start plugging in a times x minus h, which is a 3, squared plus negative 7 is just minus 7. What about the a? How do we figure that out? Right, the a value is the same as it was in standard form. This is a 1x squared, so it's still a 1 in vertex form. Now, just like problem number 1, you can graph them. Graph the standard form version of the parabola and the vertex form. If only one parabola appears on your screen, then you've done it right. Now, the one on the test tomorrow for number 2 is a little more difficult, so I'm going to give you a different one to try real quick. Just find somewhere like scratch paper, and we're going to try this problem. Number 2, y equals x squared minus 4x plus 16. And since you'll have choices tomorrow, I'm going to give you 4 choices. Y equals 3, parenthesis x minus 4 squared. You don't have to write down the choices. Plus 16. Y equals negative, parenthesis x minus 2 squared plus 12. Just try it. Just watch me and try it in a second when I get the choices. Y equals x minus 2 squared plus 12. And y equals parenthesis x minus 4 squared plus 16. Okay, you are trying to take it from standard form to vertex form. Is there anybody that can tell me how we could eliminate any of those before we even graph? Right, the 3, this one can be eliminated because what's your a value? A positive 1. So that means we can also eliminate b, which has a negative 1 in the a place. That leaves just c and d. So we're trying to figure out if the vertex is 2, 12 or 4, 16, and how would you figure that out? Well, you never know. You never know. Don't assume. What's the best way to figure out where the vertex of this parabola is? Graph it, okay? So go and graph it. I would pay attention in the front if I were y'all. Hold on one second. X squared, guys, there's a reason I created this problem. X squared minus 4x plus 16. You have now discovered that when you graph it, you don't see it because it's out of this window. That means it's higher than 10. Because think about it. 16 is the y-intercept, right? So it crosses the y-axis up here, and that must mean the vertex is above the screen also. How could you figure out the vertex another way? The table. Second table. Do you see a number that's surrounded by repeaters, but it doesn't? 212. So now do you see why you wouldn't see the graph? Because it goes right to up 12 and it opens up. So if the vertex is 2, 12, doesn't that mean it'll be x minus 2 plus 12? So C. So just remember, if you graph something and it doesn't show up on the window of your calculator, go to the table to find the information you need. Yes? I don't know. You never know. Okay. Number 3. Write an equation of a quadratic in this one tomorrow is going to be vertex. So change that to vertex form that has a vertex -8 to 3. I don't know why the review sheet had standard because the test is vertex form tomorrow. I made the review sheet. I didn't make the test. I didn't make this one. We take turns making them. Okay, y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. What number gets plugged in the h? -8 though. And when that occurs, minus the negative becomes positive. What number gets plugged in the k place? 3. Did they give you any other information? So for that one, you just have to assume this is a 1. Okay, so unless they give you other information, you just make sure you have the right numbers in the h and the k. All right, number 4. Find the domain of f of x equals -3x squared minus 2x plus 1. What is the domain for any quadratic function? Correct. And if you don't remember that, you'll simply graph this and see that it goes left forever and right forever. Okay? Number 5. What is the axis of symmetry for the graph defined by the function y equals 2x squared minus 4x minus 2? How could we easily find the axis of symmetry? We'll graph it. No, it's not. Y equals 2x squared minus 4x minus 2. Okay, once it's graphed, you'll look for where you would need to draw in the axis of symmetry. And so the equation of the line would be what? X equals 1. Because wouldn't it be a vertical line having to cut through the x-axis at 1? So x equals 1. Yes? Hit zoom 6. All right, number 6. What is the range of the following quadratic function? Okay, when you hear the word range, you know that you're worried about what? Right, y values. But which one do you do first? Which one do you list first? No, like you said how far up and how far down, but which way do we write it? Negative to positive, which would be down and then up. So shouldn't we look at a graph to see how far down it goes and how far up it goes? Some of you don't have to graph it. Some of you know that this shifts left 2, down 6, and then it opens down. You can visualize the graph because you know all the rules, but not everybody can. So you can graph it. Y equals -2, parenthesis, x plus 2, squared minus 6. Once you have a picture up here, you see that it goes down for how long? To negative infinity, and it goes up the y-axis until it gets to -6. So the range is negative infinity to -6, and it will never go higher than that, so you put a bracket. Now, what Zaire was trying to say is, if you know the rules, you know that this is the h, this is the k, and this is the a. This h being positive 2 would send it left 2, and this k would send it down 6. One more. So the vertex would be here, and then that negative would open it down. And so it goes down forever up to -6. But if you're not able to visualize it or create a quick graph like that, just graph it in your calculator and look at it. Okay, number 7. Which of the following is not true of the graph y equals ax squared minus 6x plus 4, where a is greater than 0? Okay, so A being greater than 0 means that you're going to have a positive A value. So if your A value is positive, is this graph a parabola? Yes, because it's squared, but we're looking for not true, so mark that one out. Will the y-intercept be positive? What is the y-intercept? 4. Remember, the C value in standard form is your y-intercept, so that's definitely positive. Will the graph have a maximum value? Why not? If your A value is positive, it opens up, and it will have a minimum, not a maximum, so this is the one that's not true. So what if they put a negative sign right here and said A is greater than 0? A can still be a number bigger than 0, like 1, 2, 3, 4 up. But if the negative's sitting there, it's now a negative whatever. Let me say that again. Pay attention. Look, what if they have something like this? And they still say where A is greater than 0. If you plug in a number greater than 0 right here, doesn't it still become negative because the negative that was already there? Think about it. A is greater than 0. So give me another greater than 0. Okay. If I plug in a 3 right there, it's a negative 3 because there was already a negative there. Okay? Yes. Okay, number 8. Use the following graph to answer questions 8 through 12. Over what interval of x is the function decreasing? Which side of the parabola is decreasing? The left side. That's the side that's going down if you read from left to right. When did it begin decreasing? Negative infinity. Why is it negative? Because left is negative. And remember, x values are left and right. So since it is going up, but it's going left, which is negative. And then it stops decreasing at 1, the x value of 1. Yes? From left to right, you're coming down the hill, and then you're going up the hill. Because left to right, as it's going up, isn't it also going left? It started increasing back here at infinity, but on the left side, which is negative infinity. Think about it. Wouldn't all of these numbers, if you plotted points, be negative numbers? So that's why it's negative infinity, because it's traveling into the negative x value. Okay, think about it like this. If I plotted any point on this part of the curve, wouldn't every single one of those points have a negative x value? And you could continue to plot points forever, and all of them would have a negative x value. So that's why it's negative infinity. Now, on the right side of the line, it starts increasing at 1, where it quit decreasing, and then it increases forever to the right. Wouldn't every single point on this side of the line have a positive x value? So that's why it's positive infinity on that side. Does that make more sense? Okay, number 10. What is the relative minimum of the graph? 1, negative 4. What is the y-intercept? 0, negative 3. What is the equation of the axis of symmetry? Where would you have to draw a line to cut that parabola in half? X equals 1. Okay, next page. Oh, maybe, I don't know. Maybe used to, yeah, the graph was to the right before, yeah, it just shouldn't be there. It should say the graph above. Okay, next page. A ball is thrown into the air, and it reaches a maximum height of 20 feet, and it hits the ground after 4 seconds. What is the appropriate domain for the scenario described and modeled by the given graph? Domain is what? Domain deals with what? The x values. This scenario is a special scenario. It's not just a graph, it's a situation. A ball is thrown into the air and reaches a maximum height of 20 feet, and then it hits the ground. Does the ball go down here? So even though they drew that, that is not there. That part of the parabola is not there because the ball cannot go below ground. So now that you see that the ball started above ground here at 0, and then when it hits the ground, it's been 4 seconds, the domain is just 0 to 4. Okay, because the furthest left point would have an x value of 0, the furthest right point would have an x value of 4. Does that make more sense? Because of the scenario here. Now, what about the range? What would it be? How low does this graph go on the y-axis? 0, because it doesn't go below ground. It goes 0 feet up to 20 feet. Number 15. What is the equation of the graph shown? Okay, it doesn't specify, so we'll just do it in vertex form. Y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. So how do you find the h and the k? The vertex. Where is the location of that vertex? Okay, so if I put a -2 in the h spot, it'll become an x plus 2. And if I put a -2 in the k place, it'll be a -2. Now, figuring out the a for this one, remember, see these 2 points? To get from this point to this point, don't you have to go up 2 over 1? Because look, this distance is 2 units. So up 2 over 1, making the a value 2. That question tomorrow will be easier because of the multiple choice options. All right, number 16. Graph the equation y equals x minus 2 squared plus 2. What does the minus 2 do to the vertex? Why would it open down? Where? I don't see a negative. This is a positive one in the a place, so it'll open up and it won't have a shrink or a stretch. The x minus 2 means it will shift right 2. And then plus 2 means it will go up 2, and then it will open up. Now, to find exact points for this parabola, what would you need to do? Graph it and use the table. Like to find some more exact point locations instead of just doing a little sketch like I just did, you would graph it and go to the table and plot some of the points you see. Does that make sense? Okay, number 17. Which function has a minimum? Or look, it also says functions. So which function or functions has a minimum? Okay, it is 2 and 3. Let's talk about why. 3 is obviously a minimum because look, you have a picture of the graph for 3 and that's a minimum point. Number 1, what would this parabola look like? It would open down. Why would it open down? And when it opens down, it doesn't have a minimum, it has a maximum. What would this parabola do? It would open up because that's a positive 3. It would also be a stretch because 3 is greater than 1. And if a graph opens up, it has a minimum. So 2 and 3 have minimums. Okay, which function has only one x-intercept? 3. If you graph the first two, they don't hit the x-axis at all. Like you would have to graph each one and look at it. These two do not hit the x-axis at all. Do I need to go over that more? No? Okay. Number 19. Use the graph to answer the following questions. Let me zoom in some. What is the average rate of change over the interval -4 to -1? Well, remember, interval means that both of these numbers are x values. So if I go to the x-axis at -4, isn't that this point? And if I go to the x-axis at -1, wouldn't that be this point? What is average rate of change the same as? Slope. So what's the easiest way to calculate the slope? Rise over run. You rise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So positive 9. And then you run 1, 2, 3. So positive 3 because you went right. That simplifies to a 3. Why do you think it's a positive 3? Well, because look though, graphically the reason it is because aren't these points on the side of the parabola that's going up? So that's why it's positive. So for the second question, they want you to use the points or the x value -1 and the x value of 2, which would be this point again, but now this point, which is on the side of the parabola that's decreasing. So doesn't that mean it's going to be a negative average rate of change? Okay, and also look, you're going from this point to this point. Now you're going from that point to that point. It's just going to be -3 because you'll end up going down 9/3, which is -3. Okay, are there any other questions? Like, this looks just like the test. So is there anything on here that you think I need to explain again? It's actually 20 because see how this is 2 parts? I made part B number 20. Because y'all were quiet. See how quickly that was because y'all were quiet?